The broadcast is now starting. All attendees are in listen-only mode.
Hello and welcome to this webinar on PPL, Making Your Repertoire Work, delivered by the ISM Trust. My name is Ben Hogwood and I'm the Classical Repertoire Manager at PPL. Before we begin, a few technical points. You can't see us, but you should be able to see the PowerPoint presentation that I'm going to give you. You should also be able to hear us, but we can't hear you. So if you have any questions, please type them in the questions box and we'll answer as many as possible at the end of the presentation. This webinar is being recorded and will be available to view on the ISM's website at ism.org/webinars. The agenda for our presentation: I'm going to begin with a quick recap about PPL. I'm going to talk about PPL PRS Limited, the music license, a new initiative that you may have heard of recently. Then we're going to look at the PPL Repertoire database with a jargon-free members guide, followed by some top tips for maximising your revenue. Then we're going to look at how, as a PPL member, you can maintain your repertoire. We'll get some updates on the PPL International Collection Service, and we'll give you some important dates for 2018 with a special reference to when PPL is due to make distributions. So about PPL, going to have a reminder of the first webinar, which, as you'll see at the bottom there, is still available at the address ism.org/webinars. And just a quick reminder of the content of that webinar. It has information on how to register with PPL. So for the basis of this second webinar, we're going to assume that you've already done that. However, if you're watching this and you're not yet a PPL member, please stay with us, because there's plenty for you to put into practice when you do become a member. The first webinar has a quick history of PPL, which was formed in 1934. It looks at the difference between us and PRS for music, and it looks at the people and premises that we license. It studies the revenue that we collected in 2016 and how that was distributed, and talks through registering with PPL, which of course you can do from the PPL website. There is a guide to our International Collection Service, but that will be updated here. And there's specific instructions on completing your US tax form if you have earnings from the States. PPL is here to serve our members. We exist to ensure that those who invest their time, talent and money to make recorded music, so that's you, hopefully, are being paid fairly for their work. We license that recorded music to be played in public or broadcast in the UK and distribute the license fee to our performer and recording rights holder members. So when I say recording rights holder, typically that would be a record company. PPL collects money for public performance and broadcasting and additional rights such as private copy income in many territories around the world. We'll learn more of that as we go on. And our mission is to manage the sound recording rights our members entrust to us and to maximise the earnings from broadcast and public performance and distribute payments as efficiently as possible. A quick look then at PPL and PRS for music, and a reminder of the difference between us. PPL looks after the master rights for the sound recording. PRS for music looks after the composition, so that is the music, arrangements, lyrics and libretto. However, since we last spoke, we have begun a joint venture between PPL and PRS for music. We have joined forces to make it easier for our customers to obtain a music license for the playing or performance of music in public. And this video will give you an idea of how that is working and how it works if you want to purchase a license.
Without a toe-tapping, shake-throwing, attention-grabbing soundtrack, businesses might fall a bit flat. Music is essential energy. It's commercial oxygen. But music isn't just there. People create it. And you might not realise this, but organisations have to get permission from the music creators to play or perform their works in public. This doesn't just apply to nightclubs or bars, it's relevant to all kinds of different businesses who use music for the enjoyment of their customers and staff. And with millions of great songs available worldwide, for you to pay everyone involved in creating them individually would be impossible. So that's how we can help. We're the link between the hundreds of thousands of UK businesses who play music and the talented, passionate people who write, perform and record it. The best bit is, other than our business costs, all of your license fee actually goes back to them. You may have heard of our parent companies before. PPL represents performers and record companies, while PRS for music represents songwriters, composers and music publishers. And now they're launching a new venture to bring their public performance services together under one name, PPL PRS. We're making things easier for you. So now you only have to purchase the music license. It's easy to arrange and most importantly it helps enable you to turn a salon into a sound stage or a field into a festival. Get the music license from PPL PRS to put the essential energy of music at the heart of your business.
So there you have an idea of what we are doing with the music license. And I'm going to show you how that fits into our day-to-day operations at PPL. Now this is a slide you can also see on the first webinar, but it's worth repeating because if we look along the top, we can see the revenue that comes in from the music license from our broadcasters such as the BBC and Sky, ITV, and from all our public performance venues. We have the airplay data that we obtain from those people often as a condition of their license. We have the audience data that we get from specific programs and stations. And then along the bottom, we have the repertoire data that we receive from our rights holders or record companies. We have the rights data that they provide to us about each specific recording. And we have the member data that we have on our database, and that's information about individual performer members or rights holder members. All those come together to generate the payments that we make to you, our members. Now, with PPL registration already covered in the first webinar, we're assuming you're signed up with PPL and ready to go. So I've taken the liberty of logging into my own account because I am a part-time performer and a member of PPL. So to talk you through the screen of my sort of homepage, you can see the latest payment towards the top left of the screen there, £1.71. So not an enormous amount, but it all counts. You can see the 1 in the circle, that's details on the claims that I've made. We'll talk through that in a little while. You'll also see that I'm signed up for all 35 territories that PPL cover for performers. Now you see the block of rectangles on the left with the heading Manage Music. Here you can add or amend details and look at payments on the block next to it, Manage Accounts. And then on the timeline, you'll see key dates as the year moves on. So you'll see that the next key date, Friday the 29th of June, will be the date where we make our main annual payment for 2017. We're going to take a detailed look at the PPL Repertoire database now, which you can access by clicking on the Search Repertoire box where the green circle is. So we're going to click on that. And for the basis of this example, we're going to use a recent recording of Bach's B minor Mass made by Stephen Layton, the choir of Trinity College, Cambridge, and the Orchestra of the Age of Enlightenment. And you'll see from the screen on the left that there are many ways that you can search the PPL repertoire database. You can search at recording level, or you can search at product level. You can search the whole PPL repertoire database, so that's everything in the dark blue center screen there. Or you can narrow it down to My Repertoire, which is the recordings that you are listed on. You can customize your search, which is particularly helpful in classical music, where the titles are styled in potentially very different ways. Or you can use an exact search if you know the exact name of the song you're looking for instance, if you're looking for pop music. And in the example here, we're using a more specific combination of the band artist name and the recording title, and I'll explain the terminology behind all the repertoire database shortly. For this one, we're going to use includes as the search criteria. And if you click on the orange search button, you'll see that we have 27 records found. Now this is each section of the B minor Mass. And I'm going to talk you through each of the headings that we have just under where it says 27 records found. To begin with, we've got the PPL recording ID, so that's the unique identifier automatically assigned by PPL. We have the band artist name, and that's the name of the artist or artists exactly as released and known to the music buying public. So this could be an individual, as in Gwilym Bowen. It could be a group, as in the Orchestra of the Age of Enlightenment. It could be an orchestra, or it could be a collaboration, any combination of those things. Then moving one step to the right, we have the recording title, and that's the full title by which the recording is known to the music buying public. And here it includes things like the composer number, which can help, the BWV 232, which is the position in Bach's catalogue of works. That can help with searching. Next to that, we've got the ISRC. Now, ISRC stands for International Standard Recording Code, and that's a unique 12-digit code assigned to an individual recording. Then we have the P date. That's the year in which this version of the recording was first released, 2018 in this case. The P name, that's the name of the original copyright owner. That's Hyperion Records Limited. And it's the original copyright owner of the sound recording as of the P date. Then we have the recording duration, 4 minutes 16. We have the country of recording, which is the country in which the majority of the recording was made. Country of commissioning is the country in which the original copyright owner, party that made the recording, is principally established. So in this case, Hyperion again in United Kingdom. If you perform on this recording, under the My Repertoire heading, you'll see a head and shoulders that indicates you are present and listed. And if that recording has been used in the UK or internationally, and this use has been reported to PPL, you'll see a loudspeaker under the reported use column. But please note, this does not always necessarily mean a payment will be forthcoming. It's worth noting that if you don't find what you're looking for on your first search, you can of course click search again in the orange box further up, and you can amend your search criteria. But we're going to choose an individual recording from this list. Now this takes us into the recording details screen, where we see a much more detailed account of the recording that you are looking for. So on display are some of the things that I've talked through: the ISRC, the P date, country of recording, country of commissioning, P name. But then we have some extra information. We have genre, which can be populated with the style or category of the music. So that's classical in this case, or pop or rock. Reported use Currently that says no, but when this recording is played on the radio or in public and we are able to match that, that will change to yes. Alternative title, that can be used if the recording has an alternative name. The recording main venue, which narrows it right down to the individual building or venue where the recording was made. The duration, information on whether the recording is a remaster, and if yes, that obviously says that it is. And if medley says yes, then this indicates the recording is a medley of more than one individual lyrical or musical work. If your recording has a sample, then that will be indicated in the column there, together with an exact recording date when the recording was mastered. This one obviously has a content type of audio. We can have video or multimedia, but remember that performers are not eligible for payment in either of those forms from PPL. And then we have the date added to the database, which is the date that the sound recording was processed and added to the PPL Repertoire database. So you'll see, as well as the recording details, we have contributors, candidate recordings and related products. So I'm just going to quickly talk you through the contributors bit. If you're present on this recording, you'll see a list of the contributors. So you would see, for instance, Stephen Layton and the members of the choir and the orchestra. But if you're not yet on the recording, then you will not be able to see that information. You have to make a successful claim before you can actually look at the performer list. Candidate recordings, that's effectively looking under the bonnet of the system so that you can see how the recording has been sent in by all the data sources, if, for instance, it's part of a compilation. And related products shows you the products on which this recording appears. At the moment, it will just be the one. Now I'm going to talk you through some top tips for maximising your revenue as performer members of PPL and the person sitting next to you if you record as part of an ensemble. Our first top tip is to make sure you're registered with PPL for both domestic and international collections. That sounds very obvious, but it is worth checking that you are covered for all territories. So that means referring back to the first screen on your account and checking, like my one, that you are 35 out of 35. And as PPL adds new territories, then that number will grow. Second top tip is to check your repertoire list. If you record frequently, it's worth setting aside some time every few months to do this, to make sure your most recent releases are all on the repertoire database and that they all have the correct details. That may well be the case, but it never hurts to check again, just to ensure. If you're a classical show or jazz artist, well, recommendation is that it is well worth considering pop session work if it is available to you. And we recommend this because we find that for a good number of classical performers, orchestral musicians, choral singers, this work can supplement your earnings and can be a long-lasting benefit to you. And it's worth remembering also that when you appear on a recording, we are looking abroad for reported plays of that recording. So always worth remembering that it doesn't have to necessarily be big in the UK to earn you some money. The fourth top tip is to check the person next to you. Are they registered? Are they being paid appropriately for their recordings? Without being too nosy, of course, but it's well worth checking and comparing notes because we're obviously keen that you're getting the best possible service from PPL as a performer member. I'm going to talk through now how you might use myPPL, our online system, to keep your account up to date, just to make sure that everything is running as it should be. If you're a performer member of PPL, make claims on your repertoire, and we'll cover that in more detail very shortly. If you're a rights holder and own the rights to a recording, you may well be a record company member of PPL also. If that's the case, you can register the repertoire you own and amend the existing repertoire that you own also. And for both performers and rights holders, you can update your details, and that's especially important if you move house, if you change your surname through marriage, or change your bank account, or even if you acquire another alias as a new artist name that you have. You can raise queries with the PPL Member Services team, who are available between 9 and 6 every day. You can do this by email or by phone, and all the details are on the contact section of the PPL website, which is ppluk.com. You can view your statements on your myPPL account, so you can check your repertoire is getting the sort of payment you think it should be. If you're in doubt, please contact us about this. And lastly, you can ensure your US tax form is up to date. Typically, we'll contact you if it isn't, but again, this is something worth checking. Maintaining your repertoire as a performer member of PPL. So we're going to return to my own PPL account, and we're going to go back to repertoire search. But this time we're going to look at the My Repertoire section rather than the whole PPL database. So if you click on My Repertoire, you will then see a list of all the recordings on which you have made a contribution. In my case, that is with the band that I'm a member of, a band called Flux. We have a total of 11 recordings from the last few years. Now, looking across the top, you can see the details that I gave to you earlier on, and you can also see the head and shoulders in the My Repertoire column, which indicates that I am listed on that recording, and you'll also see a couple of them have reported use. So yes, a couple have been broadcast. Now at this point, it's a good point just to remind you about how these recordings are paid by PPL. So typically for a broadcast, the rights holder will receive half of the payment and the performers will receive the other half. Now on the left-hand side, that denotes the featured performers and the non-featured performers. Just a quick definition again of what we mean by featured and non-featured. For featured, we have contracted featured performer. This is a performer bound by an exclusive agreement with the relevant record company to perform on the sound recording. An other featured performer is a performer who contributes an audible performance to the sound recording and is a lead vocalist, not contracted to the commissioned record company, or another performer whose name is linked to the contracted featured performer. There are several bits of criteria for other featured, and we would recommend that you look at the distribution rules on the PPL website. A non-featured performer, which is the one we are particularly concentrating on, that is a performer who is not a contracted featured performer or an other featured performer, obviously. But examples of non-featured performers are session musicians and backing singers. So the information about the categories is important for when you come to make a performer claim, which is what I'm going to talk you through now. And this is to make sure that you're listed on all of your repertoire so that it gives the maximum earning potential from your PPL distribution. So going back to my repertoire, I'm going to make a claim on the Flux song called Good Grief. You can see that I've called up the recording title there, and I've opted for the begins with criteria and typed Good Grief into the box. And the auto predictor's come up with several possible options. So if we click on search at this point, we have a whole list of Good Grief songs, from Bastille at the top to the one that I'm particularly interested in, Vlux, right at the bottom. But it's important to note here that there are several versions, and you have to just be careful to click on the right one, and also be aware that for some songs there will be different mixes, so you have to be careful that you choose the appropriate mix on which you have appeared. So looking at the details for the Vlux version of Good Grief, you can see we have now arrived at the recording details screen that I took you through several minutes ago. And what we're going to do here, we're going to click on the claim button. But just before we do that, I'm going to talk you through the contributors screen. There it is. Now here you see the contributors, and they are visible because I am actually on this recording, so I'm allowed to look at those. And you can see here we've got 4 of the 5 Vlux band members, and that's because one member of the band is not yet a fully approved PPL member. But by having a featured count of 5, PPL is keeping their share of the revenue for when they're registered. One of the points of showing you this screen is that it's very important that all your different performing roles are covered here. So you can see on the list David Goggin has roles of vocals, drums, guitar and keyboards. And for a small number of overseas societies, that means that he might be entitled to a very slight increase in the payment. It's worth bearing in mind also from the position of accuracy, in case another performer comes along and claims to have played the guitar or played keyboards on this recording. This happens sometimes with older repertoire where understandably people's memories are not so strong, and to have exact information about who has played what means that we can be much more accurate when we're dealing with claims at the PPL end. Because we do monitor all of our claims before we accept them, and if appropriate we ask for evidence, so that's if they are high earning recordings or if a performer is claiming a large number of recordings at once. There's a list of acceptable evidence on the PPL website, but it includes correspondence from the record company, specific details on the physical product, or verification from the producer or one or more of the other performers on the recording. So if you're claiming as a non-featured artist and you're asked for evidence, those things are worth bearing in mind. So returning to the recordings details screen, we're now going to click on the claim button that you can see circled there. And for instance, I'm going to say that I played tambourine on this recording as well, and I want that role to be covered. So we have a quick box that asks us if we are sure about submitting a claim. And having clicked on Submit Claim, it then says, do we want to go to the claims basket, which we're going to do now. Now this is where the contribution category information is put in. In this case, I'm going to, as a contracted member of the band, put that information in. You might put non-featured if you're in the ensemble, in an orchestra or choir. As the role, I have tambourine, and the country of performance, so that's where you've made the recording, that's going to be United Kingdom. And if you click on Apply in the circle there, then that will apply that information to your claim. So you can see now that contribution category, role and country of performance have been populated. And the status is complete, so that is ready to send to PPL. So you tick that you've read and agreed to the terms and conditions, and when you're ready, you submit your completed claims. So that could be any number from 1 to even several hundred at once. Worth remembering at this point for performers and rights holders, but performers especially, if you make claims on your repertoire, PPL will match to any airplay public performance records received running back as far as 2011. So that's the case for performers. For rights holders, the recording has to be a registered recording by a PPL member. Now, in the last webinar, we touched briefly on improvements in performer data, and I just wanted to give you sight of that again. Looking at the Bach mass in B minor that we examined earlier, and we looked at it on the PPL Repertoire database, all the performers that you see listed on the right-hand side, the members of the Trinity College Choir, Cambridge, and the members of the Orchestra of the Age of Enlightenment, they are all submitted to us by Hyperion as part of their send, where they send us their new recordings. And that's because for new recordings, we've made it a rule that rights holders, record companies, should supply all the performers to us wherever possible. And Hyperion are certainly not alone. There are an increasing number of classical and pop record companies that give us all the performers on the recordings, which we can then match to the members that we have listed on our PPL database. So in this case, Hyperion would give us information about the soloists as well, and the choir members and the orchestral players. Turning from that, we're going to have a quick recap of the statements that are available to you on myPPL as a PPL member. So if you're logged in to your own account, as you know, you can look at your repertoire, which we've done. You can make claims and ensure that you're properly listed on everything. And you can also look at your payments. You can download statements and a tax certificate for each payment, and a recording allocation spreadsheet, which you'll see there, the green rectangle. That itemises your recordings and the total amount of money each has received in the UK. And it's important to note this is for the UK only currently, as we do not always get exact track level information in reporting from our overseas counterparts. So you can look at the revenue analysis, and I'm going to click on that to show you now. Now this would enable you to see which of your recordings is performing strongly and where those recordings are being played. For instance, the distribution summary, you can see that the example recording has made £110.67 from broadcast, and that the majority of that has come from commercial radio. And you can drill into some of these elements further. So you'll see the second pie chart gives you the top broadcast revenue sources, and you'll see in the example that BBC Radio 2 and Heart Network are the top two there. But it's particularly helpful because it might help you to make decisions on promotion if you're a feature performer. And if you're a non-feature performer, it will give you an insight into which of your sessions have been more profitable on the airplay front. So I'm very pleased to give an update on PPL's international collections service, which happily has improved even since the first webinar that we gave to you with ISM. And our global reach means that we now have 87 international agreements, which is up 3, across 41 countries. So if you've signed our international performer mandate, you will get coverage in all of the territories in which we have performer agreements, which, as you saw from mine, is 35. And if you do this, you can benefit from a low cost of collections, which can be as low as 7%. And it's lower than most neighbouring rights agencies would charge. We also have business services agreements with a couple of these territories, including Ireland and Portugal. And of course, as we said earlier, we have qualified intermediary status where you can reduce your US tax. Looking at the 2016 revenue that received by country, you'll see that's a total of £48.3 million, a 32% growth on 2015 and a 16% growth on currency neutral basis. Our results for 2017, which are still warmly off the press, they actually confirm a growth of another 3% for 2017 revenue, and that's gone up to £49.6 million. So that means in the past decade, PPL's annual international collections have grown from 6 million to 49.6, which is 726%, I'm informed. And you'll see from the 2017 breakdown there that many European countries are well represented, and we also have growing coverage in Japan, which you'll see further down the list there. So to plan your diary for the rest of the year, you will see these important dates when you log into your PPL account. So reading across from the top, if you're a rights holder member, it's well worth noting the January 31st deadline, which is when rights holders need to submit all of their repertoire to PPL for the previous year. We have an international distribution that takes place every 3 months, so March, June, September, December. June the 29th, as I said, is the main PPL UK payment, where we will pay out for 2017 broadcast and public performance. Then in October, we will have a deadline for the performer claims to be received. So if you're checking your repertoire, do bear that in mind, and that will be announced on our website. And providing your claims are submitted to us before then, they will be eligible for the December payment, which is a UK distribution and adjustment. The adjustment takes account of changes to performer lineups and changes in rights holding. And now we reach the point where you are very welcome to ask any questions that you may have about PPL. It's good to remember that this webinar will be online for you to watch again. So if there's anything you want specifically to look at in more detail again, please do. If you have any questions that you want to ask to PPL directly, then please do that too by visiting the PPL website, ppluk.com, and you'll see from there where you can contact us directly. So if you'd like to ask any questions now, please do. So our first question is, does the PPL distribution cover electronic music production? And the answer to that is yes, it can do, providing your contribution to a recording is what we would call a qualifying contribution. So if you're programming, certainly if you're playing keyboards, and certainly if you're playing any instrument, then you would be eligible for PPL monies. If you're what we call a performing producer, that's a little bit more specific, but again, you would be eligible for PPL payments. And a second question that we have, does it matter if the title of the recording, e.g. a song in Italian, is not exactly correct in the PPL database? That is a good question. If you do see any mistakes in the PPL database of that sort, or sort of a mistranslation perhaps, then please get in touch with us and let us know about that, because we can certainly speak to the person who submitted it, the organisation that submitted it, and we can look into that on your behalf. We are still able to match misspellings, because some of our reporting on occasion, not a great deal of it, but on occasion some of our reporting has misspellings, and we're still able to match that to what we have on the Repertoire database. Any more questions? If we miss the 31st of January deadline for registering a recording, will royalties be paid retrospectively in a later year? The answer to that is no, because that's the point in which we have to draw a line and just have all the repertoire that PPL covers for the previous broadcasting year. It will be covered for royalties going forward, but not looking backwards. It has to be registered by the 31st of January in the year after the airplay. And another question, if I made recordings in 2011 but never registered with PPL, can I still submit the claim? Absolutely. It doesn't matter when you made the recording, actually, as long as it's a recording that is still in copyright, you can claim on that recording. And I would even advise you to check recordings that might not be in copyright. I know that's unlikely, because that would have to have been made in 1963 or earlier. But I would absolutely recommend that you claim on all recordings that you've made, because they are all, as long as they're still in copyright, they're all valid for PPL distribution. Does PPL collect on recordings that are not in physical form, i.e. have only been sent direct to Radio for broadcast rather than actually released? It has to be a commercial recording to be eligible for the PPL distribution. So it has to be commercially available in some way, and it has to have been submitted to us by a rights holder with that intention. Any more questions? A question about electronic music produced with a computer but not instruments. Music made with samples and vocals or no vocals. Can it be registered still? Yes, absolutely. We certainly class a computer as an instrument, because somebody will have been doing the programming for that recording, and they are absolutely eligible for PPL payments if it's a commercially available recording. So yes. Any more questions? Okay, well, I'd like to thank you very much for your time. Please do visit this webinar again if you want to go through the information. And obviously, please get in touch with PPL if you have any further questions. Thank you very much.